can't stop. Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Alright guys, I had a completely different video planned for today, but we actually got a bunch of spoilers from Organic Dinosaur, specifically episodes 207 through 211. I talked about episode 207 already, so I'm just going to be reading through the spoilers for episode 208 through episode 211. And it seems like there's going to be a lot of anime only stuff, but it seems like canon anime stuff. We're not necessarily going on any Chocho arcs or anything like that. It seems like it's going to be 100% predicated about the Kata organization and filling in a lot of blanks that we didn't necessarily get in the Boruto manga. Some of you guys are going to be super excited to see exactly what we actually do get to see. Now, I'm going to start with episode 208. Again, these spoilers were actually translated by Organic Dinosaur. Episode 208 title is going to be the manifestation of Momoshiki. Into the actual paragraph, it says, Boruto has taken severe damage due to being attacked by the new Team 7. It sends him into a fit of rage. Boruto's counterattack forced the new Team 7 onto the brink of yet another crisis. They're in danger of being totally annihilated. Boruto faints because of Boruto's subsequent attack, but then his consciousness gets hijacked. Suddenly, a member of the Otsuki clan, Momoshiki, has been revived. To the amazement of Sada, Mitsuki, and Kawaki, Momoshiki then shows off his tremendous powers right in front of their eyes. After their life or death struggle, Boruto and his comrades finally manage to extricate Naruto and are able to return home to the village. It seems that Boruto himself has no recollection of the incident. Sada and Mitsuki are worried about Boruto and also the unusual phenomenon that transpired in the midst of their battle within Boruto's body. What will Uchiha Sasuke do about it after hearing about the events from them? Alright, now this episode right here seems to be absolutely amazing. Everything that we thought it was going to be is going to be adapting chapter 43 of the Boruto manga. So if you guys want to see exactly what happens in this episode right here, you guys can actually go through that right there. But also the biggest part about this episode is going to be Momoshiki finally being revived. The way that they worded it right here, or the way that Organic Dinosaur actually translated it right here, actually made it seem like Momoshiki was actually going to be revived. Literally, it says that Momoshiki is going to be revived. That's not necessarily going to be the case. Momoshiki is going to temporarily revive and take over Boruto's body. Again, temporarily. As the spoilers go back to say, it says Boruto and his comrades finally managed to extricate Naruto, which basically implies that Boruto actually comes back to consciousness. It actually takes back over his body. Again, this right here is going to be like one of the big max episodes that we do get this year. I don't necessarily expect the whole episode to be absolutely amazing, but just when Momoshiki actually does get quote unquote revived, that right there is supposed to provide a lot of entertainment. And of course, when it actually does come out, I'm going to go over exactly what happens in chapter 43 and give you guys some screenshots and some pictures so you guys can get a very good visual. But again, if you guys want to go over it yourself, it's going to be chapter 43 of the Boruto manga. The next one is going to be episode 209. The title for episode 209 is going to be The Pariah. Into the actual paragraph, it says, Kawaki remembers the terror of the unusual phenomenon that had just transpired within Boruto in his own self. Kawaki truly experienced how the karma itself was a greater hazard than he had originally anticipated. With Kata continuing to watch over them, he is starting to feel like the Konoha village might be in an even more critical situation. Up until now, everyone in the Uzumaki family had been considerate and kind towards him. In addition, he has been getting along with his other friends in the village too. Kawaki becomes hesitant and worried about exposing them to even more perilous incidents. As he continues remaining silent about this issue, he happens to see Boruto's younger sister, Himawari, acting strangely. Alright, now this episode right here, over with the Kata organization. We understand that there's going to be a bigger fight, or the manga readers understand that there's going to be a bigger fight coming in the upcoming episodes when they actually do start to adapt the Boruto manga a little bit more. I personally believe that we're going to start seeing a lot of the setup happening in this episode right here. Now, it doesn't necessarily say it in the actual preview, but I think that right there is going to be by design. And that right there isn't necessarily going to only be predicated from this episode. I think from episode 209 to episode 211, that's probably going to be what happens, or not necessarily going to be what happens. I think it's going to be probably like 2 to 5 minutes of backstory about the Kata organization. Not necessarily backstory, but backdrop with the Kata organization and them actually mobilizing and doing certain things to actually, progress the Boruto manga and fill in the blanks. I think that right there is going to happen. But I think this episode right here obviously is going to be much about Kawaki and his thoughts, and him actually putting the Uzumakis, and not only the Uzumakis but also the Konoha village, in a lot of danger because of the Kata organization. Kawaki understands right now, like, Naruto literally, like, the Hokage almost died, and he thinks it's 100% because of him. Now obviously we understand that the Kata organization, the Hidden Leaf Village, would have eventually came to blows, mainly because them actually trying to create a god tree, but Kawaki isn't necessarily seeing it as such, and because of that, it's kind of eating him up a little bit inside. But of course they do actually talk about Himawari at the end of this paragraph and her acting strangely. I'm not necessarily completely sure about what that's going to be about. I personally believe it's probably going to be a cute scene between Kawaki and Himawari, man, because a lot of fans really love them interacting with each other. But I think this episode right here, plot-wise, is definitely going to have some key things that we didn't necessarily get to read in the actual paragraph right here. But the next episode is going to be episode 110. The title of episode 110 is going to be Clues About Kata. Into the actual paragraph, it says, even though they have made contact with Jigen and the other leaders of Kata, the Konoha village has been unable to acquire many details about their organization. Meanwhile, Boruto and his comrades have battled Boro. Boro was confirmed to be the founder of the sect who was planning to use the jutsu from the Otsuki clan, the Infinite Tsukiyomi, to grant salvation to members of his own religious organization. In order to investigate any possible connections between the group and the Kata, Saratobi Konohama and Yamanaka Sai embark upon an infiltration mission in order to gain access inside of that religious organization. The two of them then happen to encounter a woman. The members, like her younger brother, can finally return home from that sect for the first time in several years. It seems as though her sibling was performing activities that served Boro and his quote-unquote god, but for some reason that woman's younger brother still hasn't been able to come back home yet. Alright, automatically, the first thing that I noticed about this episode's paragraph is that Konohama is going to be involved. Now, I don't know why, but there's a lot of Konohama fans out there, and of course, Konohama wants to start his 8th Hokage campaign. This right here is going to be the perfect time, man, because this right here is going to be a very important mission, and this right here is going to be a very low-key thing that a lot of people aren't necessarily going to be talking about, man, because the cult that Boro actually built, they actually do view Boro as a quote-unquote god, and if it does come to a situation where they find out that the Hokage and also the 5 great nations actually destroyed this quote-unquote god, depending on how big that cult actually was, it might actually cause some problems for the 5 great nations, and specifically Naruto, Boruto, and the rest of their original Team 7, or the quote-unquote new Team 7. So this right here is going to be a low-key problem that they did not necessarily address in the Boruto manga, and of course they're even talking about a little bit, or they're kind of hinting towards it in this episode, mainly because they encountered a woman that said her younger brother was in this cult. Now it says that she kind of expected him to return from this cult, but he still has not returned. So it might be possible that this cult is actually forming a coalition to go against the 5 great nations. That right there might just be a crazy theory, but I think that right there is going to be super realistic. Now, the next episode is going to be episode 211. The title actually says Tracking. Into the actual paragraph, it says, an incident has occurred in the Konoha village. Someone has stolen data about the village's ninjas. Since there were no abnormalities that were detected by the village's sensory system, there could potentially be a spy that was inside and lurking amongst them. Even though the village has strengthened its vigilance in response, the culprit is just Kashinkoji, one of the Kata's leaders who has already infiltrated the village. And meanwhile, Nara Shikadai and Akimichi Chocho and Sai's son, Yamanaka Inojin, start to track down the criminal on their own after hearing about the incident. While en route, the 3 of them happen to encounter Hatake Kakashi, who is also independently in pursuit of the culprit. They have decided to collaborate with one another in order to keep trying to chase after the perpetrator. However, even Kakashi recognizes the deceptive dexterity of Kashinkoji, who has been manipulating them all along. Alright, so I'm going to be very, very excited for this episode right here, not only because one of my favorite characters, Kakashi, is going to be in it, but also because Kashinkoji is going to be in it as well. I honestly think outside of Jigen, Kashinkoji is probably going to be the best member of the Kata organization thus far. Now, we haven't necessarily gotten to see much of Kashinkoji up until now, but I think this right here is probably going to reinstill a lot of our love for Kashinkoji. Now, the impromptu team of Inoshika Cho being led by Kakashi is probably going to be one of the best teams that we've seen yet. One of the things that was made very clear to us back in Naruto and Naruto Shippuden, obviously, was that Kakashi was on par with Shikamaru in regards to actual smarts, planning, and cunning. And of course, Shikadai being on that same team just brings that team to a whole different level of intelligence. So because of that, I think it's going to be very difficult for Kashinkoji to actually fool them. And by the end of this chapter, it does say that Kakashi recognizes the deceptive dexterity of Kashinkoji, which pretty much tells me that Kashinkoji is doing a very good job of actually fooling this new impromptu team of Inoshika Cho with Kakashi at the head of it. Now, again, we don't necessarily know a lot about the planning and the cunning of Kashinkoji, but from this, we're probably going to get to see a lot from Kashinkoji. It's probably going to be a very good cat and mouse game with a little bit of Kashinkoji's true intent behind it being spilled over a little bit in this episode right here. Now, in regards to the actual manga content being adapted to the Boruto anime, I do want to caution you guys and make you guys understand that's probably not necessarily going to be that big of a deal, mainly because we did see a lot of the spoilers in the actual opening, or the new opening that we did get in episode 206. If we did not get that, however, I would probably be a little bit worried that we're probably going to go through a rabbit hole of, like, I don't know, 50 episodes of anime only content. But because we did actually get that, we understand that in the next 3 months we're probably going to have to cover a lot of that content, and because of that, there's probably going to be a lot of manga content being adapted in the next 3 months, and a little bit too much manga content being adapted in the next 3 months, some might actually say. So I wouldn't necessarily worry if you guys are super diehard manga fans. This right here is just going to be a little sabbatical and some well-needed actual character development and Kata organization development for a lot of the characters and a lot of the scenes in the Boruto manga. But let me know what you guys think about these upcoming episodes in the comment section below. But it's me, your boy Baara B, and we up.
It's a knife.